Alright, here we go. The start of our very first YouTube video. Let's see how this goes. You can call me Gray, and you can call him.
I'm Sid Scott.
And he will always be. No matter where you look, he is there.
It's true.
Okay, the book we got here is Batman Deathmask. It was written and drawn by Yoshinori Natsume, or as Google Translate says,
Natsume Yoshinori.
Previously, he's worked on Togari and Kurozakuro.
And so, as you can see, Batman has a lot of popularity, and because of that, there's been lots of different manga published because of it for Batman. The interesting thing about this one, though, is that this is a Batman manga that was published specifically geared towards Western audiences.
Though we don't know why it was made. We know it was geared toward American audiences, but our Google foo has failed us, and we can't find out why. We can't find out if DC wanted to capitalize on that sweet, sweet manga money, or if they just wanted to work with a Japanese creator, or something.
Yeah, it's interesting, but at least the concept behind this is kind of cool. So, the concept behind Batman Deathmask is that Batman has traveled around the world for the martial arts, right? That's a big background thing. Noted, Japan has lots of different martial arts histories. So Batman travels to Japan to learn martial arts.
And this story takes place several years after he has done that. He's an older Batman, and his past from Japan has come back to haunt him.
So even though this was geared towards American audiences, this manga was actually done, published, arted, illustrated in all Japan.
And let's see how well that translates towards a Western audience. Let's start reading.
To hide one's true self, to change into another. People put on masks to assume a false identity. But is it truly false? Or is what's behind the mask really the false identity? Like every good Batman story, we start off with a standard Batman fight. And then we get the standard, oh, my parents died, so I had to become the Batman story. You know, how many times does it take for Martha Wayne and Thomas Wayne to just stay dead in these stories? That's not all. We get the brooding continuing with some, maybe I created all my villains. What if Bruce Wayne is the mask? Honestly, at this point, I'd rather not have this narration, so I can just kind of enjoy this gorgeous splash page. Though, one thing I will say is kind of weird with all this, like, big splash pages. All these characters look really good and really well done, and then we go to Harley Quinn. And she just looks like your normal waifu with boob socks and anime eyes, and just everything is just, this is them doing anime Harley Quinn. So it's kind of interesting when you see, like, Catwoman over here and Poison Ivy having normal aesthetics, having normal, just everything in their normal situations. And more manga-esque like outfits. And then we have Harley just over here looking weird as the normal anime waifu. But that's not always the only thing to notice. We also have the Riddler, who is now your normal harem protag, so clearly we know which anime genre he's in. Then we have Mr. Freeze, who is definitely just a ripoff of the Arnold Schwarzenegger one.
The Iceman cometh!
And to make this all better, the Joker is just like the normal best boy. So after the cliche beginning, you know, the beginning that happens when you know you're watching and reading a Batman story, we actually start the real story, which is now in a dream when we get to see what looks like a shadowy Batman-like figure. After this dream, he just gets to wake up to Alfred standing over his bed. After Alfred basically tells Bruce that he's old and should just stop being Batman, he then serves Bruce's breakfast, which is oddly enough a Japanese breakfast. And don't just say that, but they're also noted that he likes to tell Batman, after giving him the Japanese breakfast, that he's having men from Japan visit Wayne Tech that day. Which can only come to the normal conclusion that Alfred plans Bruce Wayne's food according to the people that he's meeting for the day. You know, he just comes in randomly. Sir, you're meeting with a French car company this morning, so I made you a cup of coffee and a croissant. You're meeting the President of the United States this afternoon, so I'll make you a burger. Maybe from McDonald's? After that, you're meeting with the Board of Hong Kong Tech Company, so don't worry, I'll work on your favorite sweet and sour pork. Bruce then arrives at Wayne Tech, where we get to see the obvious villain in the start. His name is Jiro Agurama. But, I mean, do you really care about this? Because Bruce apparently doesn't right now. Because what Bruce does care about is that there is a new hot lady intern who's working for him. And oddly enough, it apparently looks familiar to him. So, just as Jiro is talking to him, Bruce just decides to say, forget you, and goes to talk with the girl and flirt with her. Also, a bit spoiler alert for later on in this, Aya, who isn't even old enough to drink, is apparently who this person is. And Bruce is maybe 40, 50, you know, older Batman. So take that what you want. Do the creep! And do the creep! We move on from that awkward situation, where we get to see a guy running down an alleyway, like people pursued by Batman often do. Instead, he finds a bamboo forest just lying in Gotham. And in case you guys have ever been known about a Gotham thing, this is not a normal situation. Before this guy can come to some logical conclusion that it is poison ivy or something, which I don't know if I've seen poison ivy ever do anything with bamboo, a shadowy figure then appears, and it clearly invokes Batman's look, and then he cuts his face off. Which is kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of different for a villain in Gotham. We won't be showing any of the actual panels that show the cutting off, because it's actually pretty graphic. And we also want to make sure that we don't mess up with the algorithm that YouTube has for us, because YouTube algorithm is quite a fickle god. In case you still have no idea what's going on in this story, we then go to Bruce confronting his dream in this next segment. Who the hell are you? I'm you. I'm what lies behind your mask. Mask? What are you talking about? I'm not wearing a... What? What is this? You appear to have had another bad dream this morning, Master Bruce. Perhaps you could take a nap at the office. It's not my dreams that are making me tired, Alfred. Maybe? Stop the car for a sec. As you wish, sir. Looks like the cell in my dream. Only made with papers instead of iron bars. Are you taken with the painting? No, I was just remembering how unusual Japan's paper doors are. Someone could easily break out of those bars. But those bars represent the case around one's heart. Around one's heart. Quite so. Not to prevent a physical invasion, but to declare that this is not your domain. After all, even a single rope can divide the space between two people. I see. The notion of a peaceful nation. Would you care to step within and see more? The prices inside are somewhat steeper, but I guarantee you'll find many excellent articles. I'll take a rain check. Thank you. Just a heads up for this guy that you see now. He's about to close his shop off randomly, and he'll be actually off panel, which basically shows you just how much he matters to this story. So his lines could obviously have been given to anybody else in this story. Now that we're getting to the story and Bruce Wayne a part of it, we get to see that Bruce Wayne is reading the newspaper at his office, finds out about the guy who we saw earlier, who got his face chopped off, and Bruce is now just connecting the dots as if, this could be related to my dream. And then he finds out that Agurama Corporation exhibiting masks at the museum, and he's like, yep, this is all connected. I'd say Bruce was reaching for this, but, you know, in this city of Gotham, where a lady who can control plants, and where every single crime that has a riddle involved is connected to one guy, it's not that hard to figure out that there's a random connection just always coming off. Or maybe this is just Bruce actually becoming genre savvy. I don't know, that's just how you really see that he's older Bruce Wayne, because he's seen this crap before. So we continue this story by showing how well older Bruce Wayne is now by going to a museum party where he once again flirts with this minor Aya.
Wow, all cultures bow down in defeat before you.
Yeah, this compliment is kind of the most cringe thing you could say to someone. But this is also the panel where he finds out how old she is and then gets all pouty saying, guess the edgy Japanese women are really hard to figure out.
Mr. Wayne, you really are the world's greatest detective.
Which, for good starters, at least that means he's gonna stop flirting with her, right? And now I'd like to provide a special experience to you, my select guest this evening. At any other time, this particular mask would be on display under glass. But tonight, my friends, you will have the chance to try it on. Maybe you're thinking, what's the big deal? It's only a mask. But the artisan who created this put his soul into it. Word has it that it's been used in ancient rites and bestowed with magical power. Who knows? Maybe you will inherit primeval powers just by putting it on. We seem to have somehow ventured off of culture and taken a left turn into a cult. So, is there anyone in the house who would like to volunteer? Let me try. Maybe I'll be lucky and get magic powers. I've always wanted to be a superhero. Just kidding. It's hard to see in this thing. No peripheral vision? There you go. You've gotten into the spirit of the mask. And it smells all moldy. Okay, I'm done. Anybody wear this a long time? They deserve to get powers out of it. Can't seem to. Yes, you fooled me twice. Shame on me, sir. Get it off me! Please, assist our guest in removing the mask. Allow me, sir. Whack! Is this part of a joke, too? Seems one man is really getting into the performance. Dash. Security, we've got a masked guest running amok. Get in here in the double and subdue him. Fox, whoosh. Rip the mask off him, now! I'm not so sure he's acting now. You're right, that's no act. But then, what the hell? Now what? Well, this just gets to show that Bruce Wayne apparently doesn't do anything until a lady screams at him. So we see here that Batman does eventually investigate where the scream is at, and then he finds a man with his face cut off. How convenient. Another body without a face? Just like in the paper. Just like in my dream. It can't be. You. Unfortunately, this is still too early on in the story, so the Shadow Man then escapes from him. Don't tell me. He escaped from my dreams to chase me in reality? I remember the first time he appeared, 20 years ago. Back before I became the Batman. And when I wasn't Bruce Wayne. As Bruce is, pondering about the Shadow Man escaping from him, we get to see a flashback to a younger Bruce Wayne in Japan, which actually is pretty cool. But then he gets caught spying on a dojo by Don Aya. Okay, fine, you're right, it's not Aya. It's actually, Sakura, apparently. So Bruce Wayne, actually being a bit clever, decides to make a pseudonym. The pseudonym, though, is George Woodbridge. Just think about that a second. Now you can continue to laugh or facepalm, deciding on what you want to take this as. But yes, this is probably the dumbest name possible you can think of as just a random pseudonym. But at the same time, this is Japan. They could probably believe that every person's named George there or something. But as you know, he then decides to take place in this dojo by starting a fight there. Darn. How did I get myself into this? A gaijin! He's huge! Do you think he's strong? As I am an old man, I thought it would be more appropriate for you to spar with someone closer to your own age. Bow to one another. Okay. I'm looking forward to this. He doesn't look like a martial artist. Me too. Ready, begin. Good luck, Kurosaki-sensei. I don't embarrass a teacher in front of his students. Maybe I'll just trade a few light blows with him. First pretend like we're evenly matched. Eh? Are you okay? Fine. And so, I decided to join the dojo. This is actually kind of cool to see, but we get to see Bruce bond with the family and these dojo kids. We get to learn that the woman's name is Sakura, not Aya, and the guy who beat up Bruce was named Kurosaki. The owner of the dojo is just known as Sensei. Sakura is Sensei's granddaughter. We can all see where Sakura's line is going to go. While Bruce is helping Kurosaki clean up the storage shed, Kurosaki actually decides to tell Bruce the story of a very particular mask. We're going to read that story with you. Long, long ago, in the days when samurais were still fighting over territory, there was a boy who lost both of his parents to war. The now orphaned child encountered a tengu, a creature like a goblin, in the mountains. The tengu taught the boy martial arts and sorcery, and the boy trained diligently, so that he might one day create a peaceful world devoid of war. Of course, the story immediately turns into a fairy tale as soon as the tengu appears, but anyway. Several years passed and the boy became a young man. He was confident in the martial arts and sorcery that he had learned over the years, and he wanted to test his own power. Even though the tengu warned him that his spiritual training was not yet complete, one day the young man secretly went back down the mountain. But when he reached the bottom, he discovered that the war had already ended. People were more concerned with business than martial arts. The samurai who had masters were given government positions working under their former lords. Though the young man had left his purpose, he continued searching for occasions to put into practice what he had learned. He went through one opponent after another, stirring up the seeds of discord that he had originally meant to quell. Soon enough, people became resentful and ostracized him. There was just no place for this young man in this new era of peace. So, finally, as if he made to hide his face, he left the village and secluded himself in the mountains. Months passed, and then, one day, a farmer who got lost in the mountains saw a man with two horns growing out of his head. It looked like an oni, in English what you'd call an ogre or demon. The young man, right? Was he so obsessed with fighting that he became an oni? No, it was just a mask. But legend has it that he used a certain form of magic to instill the mask with everything he'd learned, for this day when his power would be needed if society was ever in turmoil again. This is a fun cue in most comic kind of stories. It's a good thing that Kurosaki told Bruce about the Oni mask, because guess what happens when Bruce is training that night? He gets to see the Oni mask. And it tells him it wants his body.
Oh my.
Okay, yeah, fine. It wasn't quite like what you probably had in mind. Bruce gets beat up, but then wakes up the next morning as he's fine. He's actually better than fine when he decides to look at himself, even as his fighting skills have suddenly drastically increased. It's clear to everyone, though, that Bruce's personality has now taken a dark turn. Sensei checks and finds out that Bruce is possessed, but rather than telling Bruce, he just decides to, kick him out of the dojo. That's the next best thing. Back in the modern world now, we get to see Gotham, as this investigation is now underway. Aya's missing, and Batman decides to suit up. And of course, he must declare using his normal catchphrase.
I'm Batman.
Batman decides to check up on Agurama, but on the way he then spots a mugging. So the only logical course of action is to fight, but then he actually gets ambushed when he tries to stop the mugging. And actually in this fight he gets poisoned. Luckily he gets rescued by none other than Aya, the person he is going to look for. Yeah, odd coincidence. Is that Aya? Or Sakura? Or another hallucination? And who am I? Sakura? Aya? Am I George Woodbridge? Bruce Wayne? No, yes.
I'm Batman.
Aya introduces herself as Oniyori, and says that she can lead Batman to Agurama. Yes, why? To which she then just says Agurama stole the Oni mask from her family and everything from her. Agurama stole her family's land, forcing her mother and her to live in a crummy apartment, and when her mother died from being overworked, Aya was then orphaned. She wears the Oniyori garb and the mask because it supposedly can break the curse of the Oniashi, which is, the Oni mask that we mentioned from earlier. Meanwhile, in the abandoned warehouse district Gotham is obviously known for, there's a meeting of criminals, and Oniashi comes in with Agurama. Agurama explains to the gathered criminals that he's been using a mold found on the Oni mask to create a hallucinatory drug that he intends to sell on the black market. He's been having a hitman wear the mask and kill other mob bosses and drug lords to muscle in on their territory. The mask helps create a mystified icon that evokes fear, much the same way that Batman does. He's also been collecting the faces of the people he's had killed and is saving a special spot for Batman. Then a man comes in with a message for Agurama. What? You haven't heard from the men we sent to ambush Batman? Don't worry about it. He's coming here. I'm certain of it. Huh. Well, I know I can rely on you to... It can't be! What's wrong? Do the faces still disturb you? No, boss, that's not it! The face right there! It's our hitman! The guy who plays Oniyasha! Don't be absurd. If that's the hitman's face in a case, then who's behind the mask? Who are you? No! Not you! Arriving to the warehouse, Batman and Oniyori find Agurama, or rather the Oniyashi, wearing Agurama's face.
Behind this mask
Behind that mask
is another mask. Pretty cool, huh?
Aya naturally freaks out, but Batman has fought people like the Joker's daughter. No, seriously, DC has a character that's just called the Joker's daughter, who wore Joker's cut-off face. I know you're there. I've been waiting for you for a very long time. Waiting for me. Then you knew I'd be coming here. But you never came back. What are you talking about? I'd expected you to be a little more tainted by the darkness. You never showed up again after that last night. So finally, I have come to you. To meet you again. Again. Are you someone I've met before? Take off that mask and show me who you are. You think me human. What's under the mask doesn't matter. It's temporary like the rest of this body. What I really am is you. Enough nonsense. You're nothing more than a common criminal, and I'm taking you in after I rip off that mask. Come then. Stop! What is this? I'm granting you a place to battle. That is what you've been searching for, isn't it? Why you've been pursuing me? What I want is to put an end to your killings. No. All this time you have sought to become me. Your shadow testifies to that. Nonsense! You have nothing to hide. Now I shall indulge you. The time to fight is at hand. During the fight with the cultist, turn into samurai pharaohs due to the hallucinatory smoke, or maybe it's just due to magic. Either way, this is kind of a metal shot going on here. Batman, going through something similar like this, decides to actually just go directly to Oniyasha and take the fight to him. As you are ever on the hunt for battle, and I seek a new body, I will become you and continue your quest. Where am I? Someone's here? Back again tonight, eh? Been waiting for you. Who is that? No, it can't be. Me? But if that's me, then who am I? What happened to my costume? Ready? Let the training begin. This young man in front of me calls himself George Woodbridge, but his real name is Bruce Wayne. He's me about 20 years ago. And the current me has somehow appeared in front of him, but I've become some kind of shadow form. My grief over my parents became fury for the criminal who took their lives, for crime itself. All of my passion went into training myself. Am I what you are trying to become? Is this what you want? To continue fighting as you get older and older? Until the day comes when you can fight no more. I have to get strong! And in years to come, even in the past catches up to you. Look to the future. Open your eyes, Bruce! How do you know that name? If you fight with the past, you'll reach a dead end and lose sight of yourself. Because no matter how much you try, you can't change what's already happened. But if I don't fight the past, you can't let the past shackle your future. That's the real curse. Fight for your future, Bruce! This statement kind of just shocks Bruce awake again to find Oniyasha screaming in agony and confusion. Batman sees a vision of the past again like before, but not his past, but Kurosaki's. Apparently, he and Agurama had been criminals in their youth, but Kurosaki had tried to go straight. Agurama had tried to get Kurosaki into helping him steal the dojo land to sell because the land was soon going to skyrocket in price. Ah, the true evil of the word gentrification. When Kurosaki then tells him no, Agurama threatens to tell everyone else about his past. So, Kurosaki has to steal the Oniyasha mask to get his power. Apparently then kill Sensei. I couldn't escape from my past. You can't escape your past either. Wrong! Your own mind made that wall, so your mind can break through it. Then in this very beautiful shot, Bruce actually flips Kurosaki in reverse of all those years prior in the panels we read before. This is actually a great shot. Bruce decides to ask to Kurosaki why. Kurosaki explains that his father went to prison for murder and then he was abandoned by his mother. He fell into a violent crowd but decided to change his fate when he realized he was becoming just like his father, only to then fall back and try to kill Agurama and his gang. However, Sakura came in to stop him and he ripped the mask off. He left the mask and then ran away, unable to face Sakura again. At this point, the mask is starting to get desperate. His ideal body rejected him, and now his second choice is having second thoughts. So, Oniyasha is looking at Anya, who is upset at her daddy for killing great-grandpa, and abandoning her mother, and silently going, yes.
Let the hate flow through you.
So Kurosaki is actually totally cool with his daughter to kill him, and the mask is happy enough to body jump. But Batman just has to be the buzzkill, you know, talk about the buzzkill, and says, getting revenge won't end the hate. It'll only make you hate yourself. Kurosaki! Do you want her to become a murderer? Aya, the reason your mother doesn't talk about her past was she didn't want you to inherit the hatred of the past. The mask, though, decides to throw a tantrum. A temper tantrum. Destroys the building. Kurosaki pushes Aya out of the way. And he apologizes to her, only for the roof then to collapse on him. Hooray! I won't let you die here, Kurosaki! You've lived on the run for years to change your fate. You can live through this! No. These wounds are untreatable. And as Oniyasha, I killed many people. The time to answer for those crimes has come. After this entire depressing night, Aya decides to go home to Japan, like most people would. Bruce sees her off and asks what she plans to do now. She says she wants to research fine art so people can see the beautiful things that were left by the people of the past. So, I in return ask Bruce,
Have Batman and my mother ever met?
Who knows? Next time I see him, I'll ask. She's facing her future and moving forward.
So how she apparently figured that all out, not entirely sure. Could be from Bruce, or even Kurosaki just talking to each other like they know each other. But ultimately, this part is not really clear. As for me, I can't change the past. Crime still rears its ugly head in Gotham. But I'll fight. I'll fight for this city's future. I'll fight for the future of the people who live here. Because I am the Batman.
I'm Batman.
So we're not going to apologize for using that clip 3 times in one video. After that, we might get a bit of a teaser for a sequel that unfortunately was never made, with some people actually finding that the Oni mask, but I guess that's not that important because, you know, the sequel never happened.
Okay, that was Batman Deathmask. So, what did you think, Scott?
Honestly, I really enjoyed the read-through. Especially considering even though it has some of the more, I guess, common manga tropes that they have in manga, like, well, the proportions, lots of Japanese food, and kind of the weird turn of random reveals that kept going on.
I thought it was a pretty good Batman story, though I was a little flinchy, I guess, at how much retread there was with, like, what if Bruce Wayne made his villains? What if Bruce Wayne is the mask that we've been through so often and so forth? I don't know if that was so tired when it was published, but it's a bit worn through. But even with that, it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and the artwork is beautiful. Like, I swear, Bruce Wayne never looks right, but everything else is beautiful. And Batman's nose, it's too big for me on that mask.
It's a bit big, but I don't think it really detracts too much.
And it was fun to see all the Japanese cultural references. Like, there was, like, I believe this Onigawari on top of the temple that was supposed to ward off evil, and we didn't show it, but it broke when the masks are possessing Bruce Wayne, and that was just, like, a fun little detail. And for the most part, Natsumi knows when to explain Japanese things to the American audience, but there were a few times when I was like, what was that? Like the rabbit hutch. I just assume a crummy apartment, but what the heck does that mean?
I guess that could be an interesting part to think about is, what do the Japanese think of what we know about Japan culture?
Oh, that's like, when you stare at the abyss stares back.
Exactly.
We're getting caught in that feedback loop.
Yep.
Is there anything else worth mentioning?
I mean, I still think it's kind of cringy about Bruce Wayne flirting with Aya.
And then we find out she was the daughter of the woman he may or may not have had a crush on.
Yeah, I mean, not just that, but like, he's a philanthropist.
And a playboy.
And a playboy and all that. But he literally goes to a work meeting and then doesn't do anything that related to the actual meeting he's supposed to be a part of.
He just goes to awkwardly flirt with, what was she, 18, 17?
Something along that range. Not old enough to drink, apparently.
I mean, I guess that could mean she's 20, but...
Still not right.
Mm-hmm. Also, he was like, what, teenager, 20-year-old when she was born?
Maybe.
Maybe.
That's when she was born.
Though, okay, last thing. Best thing, worst thing.
Why don't you go? I'm thinking.
Okay, best thing for me was definitely the art. Worst thing was probably either the retread or how isolated the story felt. Okay, that's not actually that bad of a thing, it's just it feels very disconnected from most of the Bruce Wayne Batman stuff, which I've come to enjoy. And so I kind of wanted to see more connections, but I understand why not. It was a standalone issue, though. If it had more connections, it probably would have felt almost like a final Batman story. Though, just with all this fight for the future, you don't have to keep fighting forever. But, of course, that's kind of undercut with him of, I'm still going to be Batman and fight things forever.
Yeah. I think they needed to bring Nightwing or another Robin to take over if they still need the Batman.
That would have made a little bit more sense of an ending, but we didn't see any of those characters, so
Nope.
It didn't really, wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. So, my best thing I'd say is just the relationship we get to see of Bruce Wayne's learning martial arts. I don't think we see a lot of Bruce Wayne learning any of the stuff that he does to become the Batman. A lot of the time, it's almost off-panel.
Though we do get, okay, I haven't read every Batman comic, so I'm sure there are references to it, but at least in the cartoons, we usually get flashbacks to it, but we don't really never get a deep, in-depth dive of his time, I don't think.
No, not really.
Maybe in some of the Batman movies.
I mean, Batman Begins, we get a bit of an extensive look, but...
Fine, that one.
That's about it.
That would probably be more fun, worth exploring.
It would. You'd think that they would do that, but no, it must always be the Batman. And I guess the worst thing for me would just be Bruce's relationship with Aya.
What?
It kind of turns into a better mentor role at the end, but at the same time, it's not.
We don't really get to see those two connect and see how they reflect on both going to the future and how he inspired her to look towards the future and not the past.
Yeah.
She just kind of ditches.
Yeah.
Also, how the heck did she figure that out? Like, I know Batman and Kurosaki were talking to each other like they knew each other, but Kurosaki never uses the name George Woodbridge.
Nope.
Or did her mother only ever meet one foreigner in her life?
Only one American in that dojo ever came, and it was George Woodbridge, who was apparently Bruce Wayne. But how would they figure out that George Woodbridge was Bruce Wayne?
I don't know. Also, it was nice to see Batman bond with the family, but I wish we kind of gotten more of that.
I could agree with that. It would be nice if we got to see more of his relationship with Kurosaki and how it grew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what other purpose would he have had to really have been mentioned to Aya before?
Okay, any other final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Everybody's named George.
That's your joke?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Would you call this a recommendation or a wreckage?
I could say this more as a recommendation. I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing more of this style of Batman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me it's definitely a recommendation. I know it's a flawed story, and I kind of wish it had been ironed out, but I do really enjoy it, and I think it would make a great direct-to-DVD sequel. I mean, direct-to-DVD movie, not sequel.
Yeah.
Okay, that it?
Yeah.
Signing off for now.